Hey, Robert, how you doing, sir?
Hey, what's
What's
deal?
going on?
How are you?
Oh, nobody works harder. I'm
Is that
tired.
right? Is that what they say?
Yes, I've been working all day, and now I'm about to have a conversation that I've been excited about having the conversation about all day. So, what's going on with you? How was your day today, Rob?
It was a fairly hectic day, but I got through it, made some connections. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm excited to actually have a conversation with you once again, my
Yeah,
light-skinned friend. And I'm sorry, my caramel friend. It's caramel, right?
caramel. Yes, yes, yes.
Caramel.
So
Okay.
today we're going to be actually talking about that. We're going to be talking about colorism and all the things that come along with it. But before we do that, I want to tell everybody before we start this conversation. Supone said, "Uh-oh." Before we have this conversation, we want to make sure that you are subscribing to Fly Nubian Queen. So go over to YouTube and go over to Facebook and make sure you hit the follow button, okay? And then it's Bala's first time watching. Oh my God. Bala don't know nothing about what we doing over here. And then I want you to go over to Nobody Works Harder Than Constance Carter on YouTube and on Facebook. And I want you to follow there and subscribe, okay? Y'all hit the like button, like what we doing. And then Robert, where can they find you?
I am Robert Antoine on Facebook. I am Robert Antoine on Instagram. I am Robert Antoine on LinkedIn. And I am also Robert Antoine on Clubhouse.
And you are Robert Antoine in real life.
I'm Robert Antoine in real life.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. So, you can follow me. I am Constance Carter on Instagram as well. And for you melanated kings and queens, I want you to text the word 31996. Text the word Queens to 31996 so you can receive all these updates and all of these alerts because we got some good stuff. I want you to hit the notification bell on the YouTube so you can know every time we are showing up, every time we are live, because we got some good shit. I mean, good stuff. Good stuff to talk about all the time. We talk about Black love. We talk about your finances. We talk about growing your money and not blowing your money. We talk about your credit. We talk about your wealth. We talk about all kind of stuff that builds the community because that's what it's about. We are all about building the community in every single way. And this topic that we're going to talk about tonight, Rob, it's a taboo topic in the Black community. It is. And it's been around for a long time. And a lot of us have been affected by it. Some of us more than others. And I've often had conversations with my light-skinned friends. And they say that they've been, they say they were a victim of colorism. And then I go over to my dark-skinned homegirls, and they say that they were a victim of colorism. And they say, there's no way, ain't no light-skinned chick, been affected by colorism. But it's on both spectrums. We'll talk about your experience in a minute, but we have some very special guests that actually have.
Before you do that, Constance, what I'd like to do is just to say that Black is beautiful. Let's put that out there in the atmosphere so that we all know that, we understand that, we all agree on that. No matter what hue or color it is, Black is beautiful. If you don't get anything else out of this conversation, I want you to make sure that you understand that Robert Antoine and Constance Carter are telling you by all means necessary that Black is beautiful. And real quick, I just want to acknowledge Aaron Lawman. We love you too, brother. So make sure that you're part of this conversation. If you are watching from Kentucky, please post your state and the feed so we can shout you out real quick. If you're watching from Georgia, if you're watching from Nigeria, wherever you're watching from, put your state so we know that you're there. We shout you out and give you some love. Constance, I will say no more and let you bring these beautiful Black people to the panel.
I would love that, but I definitely want to know where everybody's tuning in from, because I know that they come. We got people all the way from Australia. We got people from South Africa. We got people from Europe. We got people from San Jose, California. We got people from Washington, D.C. We got people from Atlanta, Georgia. See, we got some folks from Arizona. We got some folks from Charlotte, North Carolina. I love it. We got them all over. So yeah, shout out where you from so that we can know. Bala said, I'm the Mandika warrior. Queen Carter, love y'all. Love you too. Steve Millet, he's from Wisconsin. Selena from Florida. Shauna Tate's from Michigan. Somebody's coming in from the ATL. Yes.
Yo, ATL.
Yeah. Toledo. All right. So I know they want to hear the conversation. They want us to stop talking, Rob. So what you think? You think we should bring them on?
Let's get it.
It's going to be a real interesting conversation for sure. Let's go. Ooh, light skin. Ooh, chocolate latte. Who else we got coming on here? Ooh, come on. Let's. Oh, we got the Rainbow Coalition up in here, Robert. What you think?
You know what's beautiful about it is that regardless of the hue or the melanin or a lot of melanin or a little bit, it's all beautiful if you look at it. You understand what I mean? And I just want to set it off right now for all of our brown skin friends who are watching and you're tuning in. Charles,
Yes, sir.
it's been told to me that brown skin brothers or chocolate brothers or ebony brothers, they're more inclined to holler at, to talk to, or be attracted to a sister if she's light skinned. What say you?
From my personal perspective, I would disagree. I like dark skinned sisters, but I've dated both. But for me personally, that's not the ultimate preference. You know, intelligence and other things are more important. But I think from a historical perspective, when we talk about it, there is some connection there, definitely.
I love it, Charles. That was a very safe answer to give. But right now, I'm just going to put you to the litmus test. Can you tell me right now, real quick, in 3 seconds or less, give me one of your favorite female entertainers right now? Quick.
Gabrielle Union.
Who?
Gabrielle Union.
One of your favorite female entertainers.
Gabrielle Union.
Gabrielle Union. Ooh. I love it.
I mean, yeah, most of them, my favorites are brown skin, you know, Nia Long.
Ooh.
It's a whole host of them.
Let's talk about that because we there shouldn't be a separation because black is black, right? So let's talk about it. What's been your experience? Let's say Hannah, what's been your experience with colorism?
So my experience with colorism is historically deeply rooted. I have family stories that I could tell forever, but I'll be really quick. But also when I had a child that was darker than me, and my mother and her sisters and her aunt's behavior and how they touched her hair, and how they treated her, which was different. And also me growing up. So I'm, as you say, I'm chocolate or kind of a mid caramel color. I'm the darkest of my siblings. And I'm gonna be honest, this is not my hair, but guess what? My little sister's hair looks just like this. And so even our behavior around hair and how my mom would angrily comb my hair, and she would say, "Oh, all Davita's hair needs is just some water and a brush." And so just how we were treated. And I think it goes into mindset and how you take that. It can go into dissension, and you can have issues with. I can have issues with people who look like my sister, but I went deeply and searched the origin of how this even started. And if my shirt says decolonize, right? It's all a mindset and to hate each other. Because guess what? One drop rule. Don't matter how light or dark you are, you black, baby.
Hello.
Right. And so I didn't let that bother me, but I do share the narrative that we are conditioned to hate ourselves, and there is a spectrum, and how we see darker versus lighter and hair and all that stuff, and we grow up hating our hair and different things like that. So that was a overarching, but there's so many stories. I think every black person who is in America has these stories from because it goes the further back you go, grandmother, aunties, the worse it gets. With the stories, right? Think about slaves in the house, the house slaves, and the slaves in the field, and the difference there. So I'll stop there because I can go on and on because that's our history as black people.
That's good. Jahari, what's been your experience as a light-skinned sister?
The whole house slaves type of thing, people thinking you're soft because you're light skinned. The first question or assumption is you're mixed. Both my parents are black, but the master was where he was not supposed to be. I have 5 beautiful sisters. We range from every shade, but I would get it all the time. The bright skin with the freckles, so then people automatically assume that you think you're a certain way, and it's even in the family, you can tell certain people are treated differently just because of how they were raised.
Treated differently how, though?
I mean, with the hair, the texture of the hair, when combing the hair. And I have two very brown children. And so I've been in the store with my kids, and people assume they're not my children. And it's irritating, it's frustrating, just the assumptions across the board.
What about you, Danielle?
I just experienced it just like many of us have all experienced racism. It's just something that you always knew was there, but it's hard to explain it. It's kind of like, explaining racism to your white colleague, right? So, they're in the same situation as you, but they perceive what happened differently. But it was because you're Black. It's the same thing with colorism inside of our own race, because that is colorism is a preference or basically a preference within your same race, right? So I've experienced throughout my entire life, through all school and through my family.
What have you experienced? What do they do? What kind of things have you experienced?
They make compliments. Some of my brothers and sisters are mixed. They're Hispanic and Black. So when family would come or say something, when family would come or they would all see us, they may compliment everybody else or the girls that were mixed, but they wouldn't say anything. Like, hey, hi T, how are you doing? Or hi Daniel, how are you? Even in a job, if there's a light skinned colleague, they may either get the opportunity to speak or do something in front as opposed to me. And I'm like, but I've been doing this for so long, but she doesn't have any experience, but because of her look, I have definitely been passed over. And, you kind of don't have anybody to talk to about it. You just kind of note it and just, keep it moving. But, again, it's hard to explain. But when you get with another dark-skinned person and you guys, and, you're able to conversate and you have these conversations, it pretty much validates, what you've experienced.
I want to hear from a brother's perspective. So Charles, what has been your experience with colorism?
So it's a little bit of the adverse. I think for most African-American men, be it light or dark, I think some of the things that we experience professionally is more or less the statements of light-skinned men are more meek and meager and mild-mannered, and dark-skinned men are more aggressive and controlling and all of these other statements. And then for me personally, I don't know necessarily if it was based upon colorism or not, but most often it would be the comments about my ability to articulate or to have a conversation or to be able to present something that was, very surprising to people of other nationalities or different colors. So for me, that was more or less my experience coming from just a cultural basis, going to A&T. I think we saw all shades and colors and shapes and sizes. And so my experience with colorism has been a little bit different. I think today we live in a little bit of a different society where it's not as relevant in our culture as much as it is in other people. So we don't experience as much. Like, we're getting a little bit more comfortable with natural hair, with natural looks. A lot of the things that used to be kind of taboo in the African-American culture, they're now becoming less taboo. Sisters are able to wear their locks, be able to dress how they need to, show their curves and all that beautiful stuff. So I think it's a good thing.
All right. So from a light-skinned brother, what has been your experience with colorism, Mr. Robert Antoinette?
Well, I've been well documented on my feeling about colorism. And I just think that it's time to Charles's point that we move past the light skin, dark skin thing. However, from my vantage point, it is still a relevant and a real topic and an issue within our community. If we look at the events of what just happened some 7 days ago, where the White House was stormed by insurrectionists and domestic terrorists. They were non-melanated, and hardly any of them got shot on sight. Hardly any of them got detained. And I know I'm veering a little bit left of your question, but the point is this. even from the days of Madam C.J. Walker, who broke the glass ceiling, and as a dark-skinned woman, she was known as the first Black woman millionaire in America. So there are some examples of where the color thing doesn't exist. But in my personal experience, to Charles's point, just being with the fellas, light-skinned guys are typically seen as softer guys, not as hard or aggressive. And you couldn't fit into certain circles because you didn't fit a certain look. And it's something that I had to deal with as a young man. But as I've grown older, become more confident in who I am, the one thing that I can tell you is this. My mother told me that you have no control over how you were born and what you look like. Both of your parents are Black. We just happen to be light-skinned Black. My mom is darker than my dad. However, I did have a really come to Jesus moment probably when I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade. And I think I shared that story with you. But as time has grown, and I'm glad to see that this generation, my children.
Share the story, Rob. Share the story with the audience. Share the story with the audience. What happened in 2nd, 3rd grade?
This not a Jan LeMan Sam moment.
I mean, we talking about
story that story.
We're talking about our. So y'all all glazing over it. Let me tell you about my experience with colorism. So I didn't necessarily experience colorism because I feel like I'm in the middle. So, and like I was telling them in the green room before, maybe because I was just a little bit.
Well, hold time out real quick. Let's set the stage properly.
What's that?
Okay. Now, when you say you're in the middle,
right?
When you look in the mirror, there's chocolate, there's caramel, and then there's butterscotch.
There's caramel. Caramel.
If you had to identify with one of those candies, right? Chocolate, caramel, or butterscotch, you identify with caramel.
Yes. Strawberry.
Now, I just want to let you know, for everybody that's watching, the millions and millions of people who are watching, you probably identify a little closer to butterscotch than caramel, and you're way far off chocolate. But tell us your experience about being in the middle.
She is close to the dark side. Thank you, Eddie Johnson. See, Eddie gets it. So what I was saying,
you try to get cool points.
what I was saying is, for me, I didn't really have anybody looking at me like, oh, she's light, oh, she's dark. But I saw it in my family. I saw it how the elders treated the younger people. I saw how when the babies came out darker, they would say, oh, look at the little black girl. Oh, she's cute for a black girl. Or I had somebody in my family that had two children, one light, one dark. Treated the dark one like shit. That dark one ended up treating their kids like shit. That dark one ended up marrying somebody that was blonde hair and blue eyes because he didn't want anything to do with being Black. I've had people people be called tar baby, black bone. You cute for cute for
dark skin girl.
So this is what we experience. Again, I didn't even realize honestly that light skinned people experienced backlash of colorism until I got way older, because I'm like, I've only seen it with dark skinned people. I haven't had any privilege for being a little bit lighter, on the lighter side. I haven't had any type of privilege because at the end of the day, I think, again, because I think I'm a little rough around the edges. So I'm just Black, but I've seen it around me and I continue to see it around me. I know that in a lot of workplaces, I know a person who had a very, very high position at a job. And she said, I know I wouldn't have gotten this job if I was dark skinned. Not that she was dumb. She was very intelligent, but she's a little bit more easier on the eyes because she was light skinned and she was able to get through those doors. So there are tons and tons of ways in which this happens, not only externally, with white people, the way they look at us, but internally, and it's the ones that are closer to slavery because grandmama, she's only like 2 generations from slavery, and then they pass that same mentality down to their kids. And then thankfully, we're getting out of it, to your point, Charles, but at the same time, my kids, you see on their hip hop videos and all that stuff where they're only choosing light skinned girls. So I overheard my son, they his little basketball buddies. They was in the car one day. I was driving them home. They was coming over to spend the night. And little boys were saying, I don't like dark skins. And my son was like, oh no, why did he say this in front of my mom? Because I gave it to him. And then the little ignorant boy had the nerve to say that his mama thought the same way as him, and he was dark skinned, and his mama was dark skinned. And I'm like, this self hatred is real. And I'm like, boy, you dark skinned. He's like, I'm not dark skinned. D, he was about your color, and he talked about he wasn't dark skinned. The little boy who didn't like dark skinned girls said he wasn't dark skinned, and his mama, who was also she was probably a little bit lighter, also agreed that he shouldn't like dark skinned girls. So I do see that we are embracing our color, we're embracing our beauty, but for boys.
Well, I've had a lot of men that tell me they don't normally date Black women, but they would date me. And that's very offensive because, how do you think Black women, I am a Black woman. How do you think we act? That I don't act different from your mama because I'm white. And then
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've had, people that are not melanated say things like, "Oh, I can't see you acting like that," or "You're not ghetto," or "You're not this," or "Oh, you don't." I had a coworker once tell me, "Oh, you don't tie your hair up with," it's just like, "Oh,
you're not kind of Black."
I'm not black. I'm not black.
Just because
I think we got to deal with the historical portion of that. We talk about like Madam C.J. Walker. But I mean, in essence, what Madam C.J. Walker was selling was your ability to look more white, right? Creamy crack.
That's
and
it.
So we have to talk about those things. And I think it transitioned itself along the years. It went from trying to look more white to be more accepted, to feel better, to do all of these other things, to the perception of because it used to be a Black-white issue more so than it was a Black-black issue, right? You wanted to look more white to appear more normal, quote unquote, to white people. So that way you can get into some of those white doors. That then transitioned to a personality thing with us. And we've seen it either through the divisive nature of what they did in Africa with the Hutus and the Tutsis. Yeah. We've seen it from what they're doing in America, from just, hey, look, I like to identify with people that look closer to what I like or what I look like. Yeah. And you see all of these different things. And so as we have grown up, these have been the things that we have been bombarded with as a culture. And that necessarily hasn't left yet, right? The stigma of being a dark-skinned woman still hasn't left all the way yet. You're still seen as being more aggressive. You're still having more of an attitude and all these other things. Where I know.
Jahari, have you ever been called a Black bitch? Because a lot of dark-skinned women. Oh, have you? Okay, because a lot of light-skinned women haven't been called Black bitches, but a lot of dark-skinned women have been called Black bitches.
My name is Jahari, so they're known. But
you do all of this stuff.
But the thing is, maybe dark-skinned women get it from the elders, but I have experienced them giving it to me. Oh, you think you're better? Oh, because your hair texture, because of this, and because of that. And I didn't ask to be like this. Like I had to have that conversation with a pastor. He was like, "Oh, you guys, you and your mom and your sisters, you have long hair and long nails." And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, I mean, this is me. I had no say in this. And it doesn't make any difference. So I have a lot of Black sisters who don't identify with me because I'm light-skinned. They don't even take the time to get to know me. And
it's likely you stuck up.
Yeah, she's stuck up. She thinks she's better. Yeah. I could just go down the list. Yeah. And,
you know what?
It's
I'm
true.
going to say real quick. I'm sorry. I just thought about that because I've been told a couple of times, "Gosh, you should really be stuck up, and you're not. You're so down to earth." And I just thought that was because I was successful. I wonder if it's because I'm light skinned.
Because you're light skinned, you haven't even.
I thought it was just because I was successful.
The colorism that you've experienced, you probably get a table quicker.
I ain't know that.
I can go down the list too because you're not paying attention. Being that I have 5 sisters, and we're all different shades. I see how certain ones are treated. When we're out in public. And so it's you get it both ways. Trust me, it's there both ways. So some people think, "Oh yeah, she cool because she looks more like us." So that would be the lighter folks, unmelanated people, and then others who are like,
melanin deficient.
Yeah.
Well, Constance, here's a question for the entire group. I'm aging myself here, but Have any of you seen the movie School Days? Are you
Yeah,
familiar
that's
with it?
one of my favorite
Yes,
joints.
yes,
Yes.
We
yes.
all know about School Days. Well, there was an epic dance scene in a beauty salon, and it was all about go to bed, what do I care? And the whole scene was fire. And I
Yes.
remember the first time I saw it, Charles, and that was one of the few times I started looking at hair texture because I share some of Constance's ignorance in the sense that I didn't really pay attention. I just knew who I was and I accepted for who they were. I was more into character than their skin complexion. And but I will say when I got to um, college, the light skin, dark skin thing was very prevalent in the sense that there was a big emphasis on educating who you truly are. You know, you're from greatness. You're from the lineage of kings and queens, but that's what was said on the surface. But when it came down to how the students congregated, there was still a separation between light skin and dark skin. It,
Really?
it, it was real. Yeah, it really was.
And you were
And,
at
and
HBCU.
Yeah.
I was at an HBCU.
And Robert, part of
But you
that,
went to Hampton, right?
No, he went to Howard.
Oh,
I'm
Howard?
sorry, bro. No, don't ever. Real HU.
First of
but
all,
Robert, part of that goes to what you said. You said you were veering to the left, but you weren't. When you said what happened in our nation's capital, right, 20 few miles from here, about how they were able to do that. No National Guards, no rubber bullets, no smoke. Right? There's a level of privilege, there's a level of access that the closest to whiteness has. Right? So that isn't veering left. We're talking about symptoms, but that's the point is that we've been dangled this carrot, our social engineered to believe that we want to be closest to a group of people that have privilege. And our social systems, there are 5 social systems that were never made for us that uphold white supremacy, knowing or unknown, intentionally or unintentionally. That's education, health, wealth, the law, media representation, and so those things are changing now.
Yes.
But we want to be on TV, right? And we know we'll get the part, media representation, the newscasters back in the 80s and 90s, right? That got that. Even how we're treated in medicine and Black women's bodies in medicine, right? Money and banking and getting approved for loans and all those different things. And so we fight each other because we want to be a part of that system because we don't know our worth. And this is so much bigger than America. So Charles, you mentioned the whole African diaspora, and it's bigger than what had been socially engineered in slavery here. Actually, slavery was never based on race until about 1481. The Catholic Church declared slavery to be based on the fourth factor in 1481. It was just based on indebtedness. It was based on religious persecution or a prisoner of war. And when Henry the Navigator began to bring slaves from the Gold Coast and it became a capitalistic system, they made a fourth factor. And shortly after that, the father of anthropology, Carl Linnaeus, who created our taxonomy of life, created a hierarchy of life. And you see this hierarchy at the very top are white, and that means they're closest to God. At the very bottom were Black people. It went Malaysians and so on. And that means we were closer to an animal. And that system has stuck that we are not closest to God. Our hair is not nice, that we are angry, that we are aggressive, we're not beautiful. And so as what you see going full circle, what you see changing now, you talked about on the surface, we're from African kings and queens. That's the surface level stuff. We're starting to do this work that we say, I know I am beautiful. I know that my sister's beautiful. I find myself complimenting other Black women, other women, period. I like your necklace. I like your hair. We got to get out of this. And so I think our healing is an acknowledgement and accountability, and that we got to stop looking for an apology. White people are not going to apologize to us. And we have to heal ourselves. And in your own healing, you'll find that our children will heal. and that we'll stop passing down, like Constance said, how we treat our kids and so on. And we'll see the erasure of how we were socially engineered. We'll decolonize our own minds. We'll save ourselves. Black people are the most resilient people there are on the planet. Surely we can overcome colorism.
I totally agree with you, Hannah, but I still do think that part of our issue has been the identity and not knowing where we truly descended from, who we were. All the story usually began, or the story was told, with slavery. That's not where the story began.
That's right.
The story began in a continent called Africa. And as long as we are able to tell that story from the perspective that you do come from a position of power. Check this out. I'll tell it to you like this. I watched something, Charles, not too long ago, where there was a world council where there was a white man who was saying that the world is overpopulated. He quoted Bill Gates by saying that we're overpopulated by about 3 billion people. So what we need to do is go to Africa and do this genetic testing. And we don't care if we kill Africans because they're next to animals, kind of what you said, Hannah, but this was like 2019. So here in this era, that kind of thought process is still propagated. And the one thing I just need to make sure that we understand and recognize is that we are truly from descendants of greatness.
Yes, yes.
And it didn't all start with slavery. But here's a point I want. I'm getting old, y'all, so I kind of forget my point sometimes. So with the Tuskegee experiment, y'all remember that?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. So they made you hate each other, but the one thing they wanted from you was your melanin. Do you know how many melanin products are on the market today? Something that you naturally possess, that you naturally create, but there is a whole European society who's looking to tap into the one thing that you naturally possess, and that is your melanin in your skin.
They extract our culture and not our pain.
Yeah, and that's just true of people of African descent by and large. I mean, we've been the subject of study because we are the most unique of all people. You have to think about everything that has come from the African American or the African body and the skin and the blood, how they've even tested the blood and how they've engineered different things, found cures from just an African American woman's blood cells. Yeah. You know, so it's not something that we don't know about. It's definitely things that they've been doing for a while now. To your point with regards to just kind of, and I think one of the brothers on there has asked about how we can kind of get rid of this system, of this caste system amongst ourselves. I think, you know, we're on the right track. It's going to take generations to change that, though. And I think it's going to take more conversations like these. I think we need to start agreeing on a couple of different things. One thing that we always seem to have an issue with is whether we're African, African American, or Black. I think that's a problem, and that's probably a discussion for another day. But I mean, the reality is that we have to start to deal with these issues and start to come together within ourselves and say, hey, it doesn't matter how light or dark your skin is. We recognize you as a brother within our community or a sister within our community, and we welcome you in, and then start from there. It doesn't matter your hair texture, it doesn't matter your hair type, because we all, at the end of the day, realize the same struggles, right? And it doesn't matter where you are in the line. The reality is that there's always been that glass ceiling that you just can't break beyond because you're African American. And until we get to a place where we're unified and we're connected and we're going through that glass together, then we won't have those. We won't be able to break those ceilings. So we got to start to take away from that. We see it. I laugh but I don't see a whole lot of pictures of a very white Jesus anymore, right? Right. But I think the first time I saw one was like last week in the store. I was like, oh man, they got you remember Rage in Harlem, that old picture of the white Jesus at the like that in a minute.
In our house.
But we're recognizing now that the lineage is real for African people, for people of African descent. We're no longer saying that he had blonde hair and blue eyes, And I think it starts there because a lot of what our problem started from was from a religious basis. So we have to start to go back and take back some of our foundation and really say, hey, look, we are who we say we were in the beginning. We mean that, and we're going to move forward in a positive manner with how we treat ourselves, how we treat our bodies, how we love on each other, how we love who we are, and how we represent that. And what's more interesting about that, and I'll digress, is that the reality is that through and through, everybody has tried to copy who we are, right? Like that's something that has never gone away. It doesn't matter if it's in music, if it's in fashion, if it's in, it doesn't matter what it is. It's always about trying to get close to Black. We always trying to get close to something else. Forget that.
Right.
Be ourselves. Let's do what we do and continue to do that and move forward. And that's where our power is.
Right, right. Ain't that the truth? You know, somebody said early on, we still talking about this? We still having this conversation? We absolutely are, because it's a necessary conversation, because it's happening every day. We're living it. Our light-skinned sisters are living. Our dark-skinned sisters are living. Brothers too. You know, Rob, I know you didn't share your story, but you said, you know, people often thought you were weak because you were light-skinned. You know, and that's a stigma that, you know, lighter-skinned men are weak, or you have memes of this is how light-skinned men do, this is how light-skinned, this is how dark-skins do.
We still talk like that.
And it's a joke, but it's also, you know, a form of reality. It's taken from something, and then, you know, they'll start.
Truth.
Yeah, it is.
Truth, I should say.
Really. So these conversations still need to happen, because it's so embedded in our DNA as a culture. As how do we push this out? You know, we do have these Black Power movements. We've been having these Black Power movements since the 60s. We're rediscovering ourselves. You know, we're Black and we're proud, but you still have a lot of objectifying of Black women. You still have, you know, the separation. I seen Beyonce, Black is King, which was a great life, but she only celebrated dark-skinned people.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, well, where are the light-skinned women?
Right.
You know, so then you're not fully representing everybody on the spectrum, because we're all different hues and shades.
And the answer is never to oppress another, right? To free someone else. I think that's where we mess up sometimes, right? Where we will go. I understand that maybe Black, darker skinned women are the most marginalized out of the whole spectrum, but to suppress and oppress, right, or deny the right to exist of lighter skinned women is not the answer either. Right? We got to find a better answer.
But do you think
absolutely?
Can't hear you.
Turn your volume up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got you now. Go ahead.
I said, but do you think that's what Beyonce was really trying to do, or was she trying to just bring something to light? Because again, things may not be said, but they're seen. So visually, what we see on TV, especially with our stars or our Hollywood, you see a lot of Black men with light-skinned women or white.
Yeah.
And it's something that we see all the time. So it's just like, you know, again, going back to the whole racism thing, just because, you know, something is highlighted, Black people are highlighted, it doesn't reference this, that there needs to be some tension, some light shown on the fact that we honor, or we see, or we Beyonce actually saying that dark skin is beautiful, because again,
she was
one time.
I think she was celebrating like dark skinned women. There's no doubt about that. But then you have light skinned women that feel like, well, what about us? And then some dark skinned women are like, well,
we're like, what about us?
Yeah,
and that's part of the problem, though, right? That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
You know, I think for us specifically, we have to be very intentional about what we do to make
sure we're
super inclusional of every spectrum of what it means to be Black. And I think we have to tell that truth, because that's something that we shy away from. And I remember, Rob, you had said this a while ago. He said, you know, there was a comment mentioned about your light-skinnedness, if you don't mind me saying it that way. But, and you had made the comment about how whenever somebody visits Africa, the reality is that you'll see a ton of different melanated hues. And I think that's the way we have to speak about this particular issue, is that we are all Black together. It doesn't matter the differences, right? Because we can split hairs all day, and we have a tendency to do that a lot, especially within our own culture. We have to stop splitting those hairs in some areas and say, hey, look, together intentionally, this is who we are, this is what we represent, and this is how we're going to move this thing forward. And I think when we begin to do that and we stop, because when we start to split hairs, other people can split those hairs even finer, right? And then that's how it starts to happen. And to the sister's point, you talk about even how slavery happened in the States. Remember, slavery was a universal thing. Blacks and whites were slaves in America until a point where they couldn't figure out who was a slave and who wasn't, right? So at that point, they said, hey, look, these cats over here, they dark, they light, or whatever. They don't look like us. They're the slaves.
That's right.
Boom, there it goes. And so from that, all of these other things started to happen, right? And then we started to portray these things on ourselves. And then, they started to play off of that. Yeah, you are a house slave, which means you are better, which means, you do get to eat from the master's seconds instead of the slops of everything else.
Right.
All of these other little things started to happen. And we believed it. And that was part of the problem.
That's the problem. We believed it.
Right?
We believed it.
And so when we stop saying, well, it's good to celebrate light-skinned women versus dark-skinned women, we say, hey, let's just celebrate all of our Black sisters.
And let me be clear, I think that point comes in media. Out of all the systems, media is the most capitalistic one, to where the point of someone being light on camera is for the comfort of white people, right? So we talked about Soul and all the movies where they turn someone Black into another animal or something, or something else, because it's a marketing risk to center Blackness for the whole time of a movie for their white audience. So we're talking about how it affects us. What about Black? What about lighter hues, darker hues? Period. Again, the closest to whiteness, because media is a social system, again, centered in whiteness. And so it's about money. So I think, again, I like how someone said taking your power back. They're literally using us as pawns to make money, right? And we're fighting about who was on camera, but they made the money off of who was on camera. And it may be a trend right now to center dark-skinned women, just like it's a trend to write a letter as your company about Black Lives Matter, but you really ain't doing nothing about that, right? So be careful with that as we fight about those decisions. And I like the word be intentional of how we take control of what we want to see. Like we have Ava DuVernay and all the other people making these different movies. And so we need to leverage that with each other. If we know different celebrities, I know talk to Constance about making a documentary. How do we use our own magic to take over media, to do those things? Don't let white people run that and pin us against each other. We need to stop that. It's 2020, they're still doing that.
Here's what's happening now, what's going to happen closer in the future. There's going to be some dissension between African-American men and women, right? Because of how things are being pitted for these same exact reasons of splitting hairs. You see all of these sisters that are being really strong and at the forefront. And then you see a brother like Ice Cube come in and say something. And then it became a fight between Black men and Black women. It wasn't even about the issue anymore. Right. So we have to be very, very intentional about how we portray things, and I think for all intents and purposes, call the truth. It's our women's time. It's their time. And it's okay for Black men that they say, hey, look, sister, it's your shine time. It's your time to go. I'm going to sit here in this background and I'm going to have your back. I'm going to do whatever you need me to do. We're going to move however we need to move to make sure that you're protected. And I love how I saw that in Georgia, especially when T.I. and some of the other brothers, when they came after Sister Keisha, they wasn't having it. So, I think that those are the type of things that we have to start to embrace and love and say, hey, look, we won't be separated no matter what you try to do to us from a media perspective or anything else, because these things are important to us and they all make us better.
I want to say that when my daughter was young, maybe 5, she kept telling me that she was Black and I was white. She even went to say, you're blanc. And she brought me Barbie and Princess Tiana. And she said, this is me and this is you. And I had to explain to her at a very young age, because she's darker, that I'm still Black. If we start in our families when our kids are young, we're all Black, because then they won't be able to teach them the narrative. They won't have that power. So that is something that we discuss in our family all the time, because I don't want them, my son, you know, we talk about dating outside of your race or dating other races and things like that. And it's like, well, yeah, but you know, if I say, well, don't you want someone like your mom? He's like, well, you know, you're light and you've got, yeah, you know, and I'm like, that is not what I represent. That is not who I am. I'm not talking about superficially, you know. So we have to take ownership in our homes first. We have to be intentional about how we teach our children. Now, I'm not saying not to date outside your race or anything, but there are just traits that a Black woman has that we've been talking about, and those are the things that I want you to see. But yeah, you start telling them, oh, even though I'm white, I'm still Black. Even though, you know, we're no different. You come from me. So, and that's just what it is. And so now they understand. So I do things with my daughter, like when she's wearing her natural hair, I wear my natural hair. And then when I straighten her hair, I straighten my hair. She has braids, I'll wear braids. Like she'll say, oh, they say they're pretty because they have blonde hair. Well, we can have blonde hair. Like that's nothing. And these are the things that I go through with her because I know that she is darker. And and they start with that kindergarten. So I just try to deal with it head on because I know what it feels like. And I don't want her giving that. I don't want her to see a light-skinned girl and feel like, oh, I can't like her because they like her, you know. And so I just start with that. When she brought me those Barbies, I was just like, wow, because she does not know, you know, she was little. She's just like, no, this is me and this is you.
Yeah, I love this conversation, Constance. To your point, Hannah and Charles, I do know that media has made a more concerted effort to show more melanin in commercials, in anchor roles in TV. And I know it's an ill-founded reason. I know it's because it's the politically correct thing to do.
That's right.
But regardless of what is the catalyst in making that movement or that change happen, it's up to us to take advantage of the platforms that we are now been given.
That's right.
Constance will tell you that my biggest thing is, you know, you can shoot a basketball, you can sing, you can do whatever you want in the entertainment industry, but in this particular capitalistic country that we live in, it's really important that brown and melanated faces are in the legislative branch of government so that we can affect policy, so that we can affect change. Because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's a whole different thing when you got a pen that can change things for real, how dollars are allocated, how social programs are implemented. So I think that it's really, really dope that we have so much melanin representation on a national scale in our bodies of government. And it pained me to see some cats who were dogging Kamala Harris, you know, for her past or whatever. You know, I was celebrating, and sometimes I was in a position, you know, fighting within, depending on which set of friends I was with. I had one set that was, you know, go Kamala, go. And another set of friends were like, nah, she did blah, 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 blah. I think it's really, really important that we publicly support each other and we do everything that we can to see each other, ensure that each of us wins. I'll say all that to say this, in spite of all that, regardless of the comments that are coming in, the dark skin, light skin thing is still a relevant issue in our community, and it's a topic that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. You know, to your point, Naomi, and you touched on a little bit too, Rob, and you talked about media representation, and it definitely made me think because we, at this point in 2021, we should have control over our own media. We should have control over the things that are seen and that are put out and that are projected to our children.
That's right.
And it's not hard to do. You know, we can get on YouTube, we can get on, you know, Facebook and start having these dialogues and just start creating, you know, different entertainment. I was looking at Roots, Discovering Your Roots yesterday. And I think Issa Rae was on there, and who else?
I love Issa Rae.
Issa Rae, Gail King, and the guy who directed Get Out. What's his name? Anyway, Jordan Peele. But my point was, Issa Rae, she started out creating her own YouTube channel, and I remember when you told me about her show on YouTube, and I had no idea what you were talking about. It was Adventures of a whatever black girl, whatever. Yeah, Awkward Black Girl. And so she created this show on YouTube, and it just kind of went viral. But she stepped out on faith and she did something. If we want to control the narrative of what's being seen to the masses, we don't have to have a big network. We don't have to go on NBC or ABC. We can do things ourselves.
Right.
And so a lot of times we're so afraid to take that step, to be out there, to be on the forefront of doing it. I think that a lot of times we just need to do it, and we can do it on a shoestring budget. So I want people to think about that too, because when we talk about colorism, I'm so glad you said that, Naomi. When we talk about media and we talk about what's being projected out there and what's being shoved down our throats because of the people who are in control, we got to look at it and say, no, we can do something different.
Yep.
And we can change the narrative, and we can start to produce our own stuff and show a whole different light. And don't got to be about bitches and hoes and wops and everything else. It could be something positive that we can be proud of.
I've been watching your show since I believe June. Because I did my birthday, and you were on my birthday. Again, just an inventive idea. And I think by the time you had an intro video, I said, "Come on, Facebook, watch, pick this show up." And I'm very serious. Because now is the time more than ever. I've written a show, watching you guys. It's a morning show we do at our church, and we have 14,000 followers. So there's a difference between invention and innovation, right? And so follow the lead. Look what Constance is doing. I'm telling you, I'm gonna speak into existence. Even if they don't pick you up, they're watching you. And I kept saying, I said, Facebook Watch is gonna pick her up. I'm waiting for you to make the announcement. Because Facebook Watch, people don't realize that these big cable companies are going out and streaming is in. Right now, Netflix and Disney Plus are leading the way. And your show can be picked up on a Netflix and streaming platform. I know last time we talked, I said, I'm trying to get with somebody on the Netflix board. I'm trying to pitch something to Netflix real quick. I got like 5 or 6 shows, right? So how do we leverage that and do that? And part of it is, let me be seen. Let me go live with my intention and my goals and have some of the same branding and marketing as much as possible, knowing how the algorithms of Facebook work, knowing your videos are going to pop up in your digital footprint you're getting ready to use. You are forcing your way to say, you better sign me. And you know what I mean? And so that's what I saw. But I have this sixth sense. I have this clairvoyance kind of thing going on. But just so you know, we see you. I've seen you since June. And you're talking about taking over. But these are ways you can do it. Even a friend who pre-recorded everything, 10 episodes, and went ahead and just premiered them every week because she's too busy to go live like this. Well, however way you're gonna do it. Also, I now put an executive producer on my CV because I'm a live producer for our morning show every day. Big conferences. Dr. Fauci is coming, and I'm producing that. Right. I'm getting my credit. It's going on my CV. In COVID, we are making movies and TV shows and live conferences. It's going on my CV because it takes a lot of programming, a lot of work, and we can take over that way. So just so you know, I see you. And if I see you, I'm sure Facebook is seeing you. I know.
Robert, she's right up the street from you. She's right up the street.
Okay. Well, I hope you can see me, Hannah. I love it. I think it's really, really important, to what Hannah's saying, to control the narrative of what people see, because even in this day age, there's still somebody in Iowa, somewhere in South Carolina, somebody in Arkansas, somebody in Texas, somebody in Oklahoma that has not seen this at all. They've only had a perpetuated story that has been passed down to them generations upon generations. Right. So you are seen as inferior, but if you're in a position of intentionality and using your superpowers for good, we can certainly change that narrative. And you go, executive producer Hannah. I'm certainly going to be watching because I see you.
We all got something to bring to the table, y'all. Don't let nobody leverage your magic. Especially right now when we all are forced to look it online, and online is free.
Hello.
Yeah, the last thing I would say, hey, Constance, the last thing I love that Hannah said is that COVID has been seen by many people as a burden, but in this day and in this time, we need to turn our burden into a blessing. I'll say that again. We need to turn our burden into a blessing. And if we're intentional and direct in what we do and how we show ourselves on the various platforms that we show up in, even if it's in aisle 11 at the Piggly Wiggly or the grocery store, or it's your Facebook,
The Piggly Wiggly.
yeah, it's at your PTA meeting. Make sure that because you are Black, you need to know that you are dope in real life, as
Right.
Tyler Perry would say.
Well, listen, I have a question for everybody on the panel. Because when we talk about any topic, we always want to talk about a resolution. We always want to talk about a solution. We don't want to just talk about the problem. We want to talk about how we can build our communities. We want to talk about how we can make a difference and effectuate change. So tell me, like, what's one thing or three things that we can do to change the narrative of how colorism is presented in this country or in your community? What is one thing that we can do? And I'll start with you, Charles.
I think Sister Hannah said it. I mean, be the author of our own stories, right? Tell our own stories, tell our truths. Don't let anybody else tell the truths and our stories for us. I think that's the first thing. Control our own media. I think the moment that we begin to do that, I think you'll really start to see the shift seriously in how we embrace our color together. Second thing is to teach our kids. That's a huge thing for me. Personally, I have a son, 12 years old. He's extremely light skinned. And that brother, he's like Malcolm X also. We so we live that life. But I think, for him, the blessing is having a community around him of men of all different colors, not just me. He has, because I'm in a couple of different frats, he has a lot of uncles. And each one of them exude power to him and show him what that looks like. So he's never afraid to be who he is, and he's never afraid to be Black, which is something I'm very, very proud for him. But I think those two factors, we can control our own narrative and tell our own story and raise our kids to believe in their own, who they are and what they are. I think things will change.
Beautiful. D.
Also agree with teaching our youth. I think that's very important. Just like the example that you had with your son and his friend in the car. Like we have to stop that. Like teach and stop. Like when it happens, educate right then and there. I also just acknowledge, and I think being sensitive to each side. And just showing love. We got to show love. We all have our part to do. And yeah, education. Stop it. Whenever you hear it, just stop it.
Stop
At least have that conversation. Don't let it just pass and be like, "Whoa, just let it keep moving." But talk about it.
And you know what? To your point, D, I think you're very right, because I think we hear it and a lot of people don't correct it. We hear it in our families and nobody says anything. And so somebody has to say no. Somebody has to say stop. Somebody got to say, no, we're not doing that no more. I have a couple of real chocolate nieces, and they call them, Blackbird and, stuff like that. Always highlight the fact that they dark. My brother does this. His daughter's dark skin. He calls her Blackbird. She's beautiful. Calls my daughter Yellowbird, because she's light skinned. But they're always talking about the color or, the hue. And we got to stop identifying people by that, because then there's that separation, so we gotta say stop it.
And just to play on that point, I have someone in my life who I love him.
Little louder.
He was an older gentleman, somebody I really loved, and he was like a father figure to me. He used to be like, "Hey, Black girl, look at that dark girl." And I mean, every time he said it to me, it stung. Because dark equated ugly as a youth to me, right? And so he started to get that started to affect me, but he didn't stop. But what he would do was, when he would say dark or when he would say Black girl, he would hug me. He would be like, "Do you know how beautiful you are?" And he literally began to change the way I felt about the word dark or Black. And so, again, sometimes you can't necessarily, especially with elders, you can't necessarily correct them, but you can balance it, So if you hear that verbiage, to a dark-skinned sister or little girl, you can go behind that person and embrace that child and do the correcting there, you know, and not just to the girls, but to the boys, because the boys, you know, they're seeing a lot of this behavior. They're seeing there's a preference sometimes. So sometimes, again, it's just about being sensitive, acknowledging what's happening, and doing that correcting. That's my point of view from a dark skinned girl.
Amen. Mr. Hari?
The things that I have already started doing for my dark skinned girl and my dark skinned boy. When people point out, especially her skin tone, because there is a stigma about dark skinned women. Yeah, he means you're beautiful. Look how beautiful your complexion is. You know, look how your skin is. Like I'm, you know, anything that can be taken negative, I change it. And then when I hear, oh, you acting real light skin right now, you know, a quick, hey, hey, you know, just stop that right now. But the number one thing is the education, and it has to start in home. Like the things that we started off with talking about were the things that we heard in the home or at grandmother's house or at auntie's house. And so we make a point to say, you know, my niece Daria, I have a niece Amari, I mean, completely different complexions, both beautiful girls. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so we just always build them up, because that world out there, whether it's our own people or other people, tend to build down. So the things like, even if I hear an elder in my family, like, we're not going to say that. You know, we're not going to separate. We're not going to separate, because I know what that feels like. So, you know, and as what you were saying about so the nicknames for us are things like yellow bone, red bone, dark bone. You know, oh, red, there's my red, there's my yellow, you know, oh, my goldie, you know, it can be beautiful, because that is what, you know, your tone is. There's nothing wrong about that. Embrace that. Be proud of that. Don't think that you're less than or you're more than, you know, and that's what I try to tell them. You know, we try to instill that. Now, telling it to myself might be a little bit harder.
You know, I think oftentimes lighter skinned people are often apologetic for being light skinned. Right? Have you ever experienced that, having to apologize, Robert? Have you know, feeling, you know, that you have to sort of downplay yourself because people are insecure because they think that you're better because you're light skinned. Have you ever had that experience?
Sure. I've had to. I think in terms of so my upbringing was really unique in that Charles, most of my friends were in a lower income tax bracket because I was raised by a single parent, and so we were not astute or well off. But my dad, may he rest in peace, he sent me to private school, so my experience was different. So imagine taking a bus from the hood to a private school every day of your life. And so in school, by default, I had to articulate, and I learned how to use my nouns and verbs, and they were in the proper tense. And then I would come home to all my friends who, you know, split verbs and had dangling participles and everything else. So I would have to, not intentionally, but I found myself dumbing down my language and how I act, and I had to hide my intellect because it wasn't even so much about colorism. It was more about intellect. If you were smart, you know, you weren't cool, and it wasn't cool to be smart during that time. And then, oh, by the way, on top of that, you know, I was a lighter hue than most of my friends. All my friends were you know, darker than I was, which isn't too hard to do. So to answer your question, yes, Constance, I did have to deal with that, and I don't want to say I apologized, but I will say that I felt like I had to be a different person in order to fit in.
Code switch.
Yeah. But I had somebody in church. I had an OG tell me that never diminish your greatness to fit into their smallness. And I didn't get that until I was a teenager, but right about that time, it clicked for me that I'm just going to be who I am, regardless of what they think or what they say.
All right, Miss Hannah, what do you think? What's something that we could do to change?
Just overarching, it kind of Robert said it a little bit about being who you are. So my take is I focus on authenticity. So discovering your authenticity. The work is different from Brene Brown and the Clifton Strengths and Stephen Covey or Franklin Covey, which is all great, but it's not, that work is not done in the lens of Black folk, right? And helping us understand who we are. So my formula is about discovering your authenticity is developing your identity and how we've been shaped, which is some of the work we've done here today. That helps you understand your purpose, feel your passion, and develop your potential. And really where it activates is what Robert said is how do you then use that authenticity to make an impact where you are. Either you're a policymaker, your emissions and records. Everybody has some version of influence. Missions and records, a homegrown person, like what Constance is doing. So you use your authenticity to make an impact to change these social systems. So I say discover your authenticity, apply that authenticity to make good, and then empower the generation behind. Like Jahari said with her daughter, find ways to end your discovery to empower the generation behind. I also have a dark-skinned daughter and the son my complexion, and doing that work with her was so intentional. Now she's 14 and so unapologetic with kinky hair, dark skin. It actually has a skin condition that she has to get treatment 3 times a week that makes her skin even darker. And she's always the only Black person in the class, and she loves herself. So that unapologetic, I know who I am, even at the age of 14, because you're always going to be discovering who you are as we grow. So we really need to know who we are and the power we have to make that change. And that really is where the work begins.
You know, so many people are broken because of the things that we have placed upon ourselves that were placed upon us by our oppressor. You know, imperialism and colonialism has, you know, essentially destroyed who we are. And it's great to have these conversations because then we can open up the dialogue to say, yeah, this is how I feel. This is what my experience was. I still hurt too, even though my experience may be different than yours, it still affected me internally. But here's where it's going to stop. Here's where it's going to end. It's going to stop with me. These are the things that I'm going to do to effectuate change, to make sure that it's not passed down to the next generation. And if I see it in my present, I'm going to stop it right now. Right. And so this is why this conversation is so important. People talk about, you know, why are we still talking about colorism? Because it still exists. It's a very topic because it still exists. And I appreciate you guys for being on the panel tonight because, I mean, just having all the different perspectives. And this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to have, you know, a light-skinned man and a dark-skinned man, a light-skinned woman and a dark-skinned woman, and then somebody in the middle just kind of talking about sharing, you know, the historical context of how this all comes together. This is exactly how I wanted the conversation to go. So thank you guys. And always, you know, my partner in crime, Mr. Robert Antoine, we about to get on Netflix. So get ready, Robert.
Listen, I wanted to thank you all. I should have did that at the top. I apologize. It is an honor to be in community with everyone here. But thank you. As I said, I see you all. So thank you for the opportunity to even share space with you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming on. Where can they find you guys? Where can they follow you all?
You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Clubhouse at Hannah Naomi Lead. You can visit my website, hannahnaomilead.com. But in my bio, there's a link tree, and you can see some articles I wrote, some work that I do. That's the easiest way. But Hannah Naomi Lead, #lead with me.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Jahari, where can they find you? Can they follow you anywhere?
Oh yeah, you can go to JahariWilliams.com and buy a house.
All right. What about you, Danielle?
You can find me at DNSmarketingsolutions.com.
All right.
On Facebook or whatever.
Charles?
I like to be hidden.
You can find me on CJC Solutions and also Native Tongue Rooted Soul on IG.
Beautiful. Mr. Antoinette?
Well, I'm just going wherever you go, dear, because I'm just hanging on to your coattails.
Okay. Any last words?
Actually, no. In all seriousness, I love this conversation. It has been an amazing time to network and connect with so many positive people. And I think these messages need to resonate and reverberate over not only the platforms that we hold, but in the homes that we live in the communities that we walk, and in the families that we have and hold near and dear to our hearts. And be careful about what we say, and more importantly, how we act. Because we are dope in real life. We are descendants of kings and queens, but we need to live that out, share that story, and make sure that we are not leaving that message in a history book, but we're sharing it. We are deeply rooted in spoken words, so we need to use the power of our tongues to be able to speak our truth, because we are Black and beautiful. And last thing I'll leave you with is that Martin Luther King said that we need to stand together as brothers and sisters, or fall together as fools.
Good.
That's
Hey,
good.
you get your little horn there. Tune, 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 tune.
Right.
One of those moments.
Good shit, y'all. Good shit. Thank you again for being on tonight. This was absolutely wonderful and a very necessary conversation that we did in our communities. And you guys, everybody out there, continue the conversation in your homes. And when you see it happening, stop it. Period. Stop it. Stop it.